Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 36 of Tour of Japan, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of Super GT class racing cars. And in this episode we're featuring one of quite a few different variants of the Honda NSX Super GT machine. This is one of the newer models. It's a 2006 shape machine, and this is the Team Arta NSX. There are two Team Arta variants to choose from. There's a slightly older model, which is a non-premium, and there's this version, the 2006 model, which of course is a premium. Now the newer NSXs in general, but especially the Stealth model, which incidentally I will not be covering in this series, are very, very popular. The NSX in general, alongside the GTR, again, usually in stealth form, are pretty much the two most popular choices of Super GT car. And it's not hard to see why. They look the part, they're premium, they have high prices, which would indicate good competitive quality, and they have strong all-round specs. However, are they really the best choices to go for? Well, the GTR, as I've mentioned before in this series, is a pretty safe bet. The Skyline is well known for being a pretty user-friendly and highly competitive car, and that is carried over to the GTR, of course. The NSX, though, surprises me that it sees pretty much as much use as the GTR, and the reason why that surprises me is because it's pretty much the polar opposite of the GTR. The GTR pretty much encompasses everything that makes the car easy to drive, forgiving, user-friendly, beginner-friendly, etc. Tons of grip, great smooth, even handling, powerful brakes, great weight distribution, everything you really need. The NSX, as I said, is pretty much the opposite of that in almost every way. The weight distribution is kind of odd, giving it, as I've mentioned before in this series, very unique and sometimes challenging handling. Overall, I would say the most challenging of all of the Super GT cars to drive and to get the best out of. And it has performance which is good, but because of that handling is much, much trickier to push to its limit, in the same way that the GTR can, just all day, every day, no trouble, no sweat. The NSX is much more of a traditional performance car, whereas the GTR really represents everything modern about racing. It's technically advanced, it's very easy to use the huge power that it has, whereas the NSX feels like much more of an old-school driver's car. It feels very mechanical, very raw, very unforgiving. A kind of car which is phenomenally quick, but has hardly any room for error. It's all down to you as the driver. The car does not do the work for you, and if you want to get the best out of the car, you have to practice with it. Now, this version of the NSX is no different to that. It's one of the newer models, so the specs are pretty good. It's not quite as powerful, though, as the Team Epson version. It produces 877 horsepower and 651 pound-feet of torque, so it's not quite the level of the Epson or some of the others, but still very strong. It weighs 1100 kilos, which is on the lower end of the spectrum for GT500 models, and the PP pretty much sits where you'd expect it to be at 653. Now this car puts out just under 800 horsepower per tonne. It's mid-engined, which in the GT500 class makes it more unique. Most of them tend to be front-engined, the Supra, the Skyline, etc. And it's that weight distribution that gives it the more challenging, tricky handling. Now, in some ways, the NSX is a very good choice, particularly on tracks which are more open and more flowing, tracks such as Tsukuba, or, no, not Tsukuba, Motegi, I should say, or Suzuka. We're at Tsukuba, certainly not Tsukuba. I would not recommend it for Tsukuba, because you just can't get the best out of it on this track. Its handling just is not suited to this track. It can certainly put in a fast lap, but it just doesn't feel like you're using the car to its best effect here. It feels wasted. All that power and top-end performance just doesn't really feel that great on this track. It's not open enough, the track isn't big enough for the car to really have its free rein as far as the driving line and run off after corners. Like I said, it's not bad around the track, it can give you a strong lap time and it can win races, of course. But if you're looking to use the NSX, or looking to have a good Tsukuba race car, I wouldn't necessarily recommend putting those two things together, because the simple fact is there are better cars for this track, and for very tight technical tracks in general. Now the car costs $950,000, which is on the higher end of things and breaks even with the other NSXs, and I certainly wouldn't not recommend driving the car, but just know that if you do buy it, it has its good and bad points. But I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.